Let's go back in time to 1932 as Converse brings you historic footage of the legendary original Celtics.
Joe Lapchick was a professional basketball player, a motivating coach, basketball Hall of Famer, and a pioneer in the fight for racial integration and equality in sports. While the 50s was a decade of prosperity for Americans, it was still a rocky time for African Americans. During this decade, there was a mass migration to the suburbs called white flight, while poor African American people moved to the city. Also in the 50s, 2/3 of African Americans still lived in the very segregated and discriminatory South. They were poor and had very little political power, along with an inferior educational system. In the 1950s, all professional NBA players were white except for Wataru Masaka, an Asian player who was drafted in 1947. Most coaches were racist and didn't think African Americans deserved the opportunity due to the color of their skin. However, in 1950, Lapchick signed Nathaniel Sweetwater Clifton, the second African American player to sign an NBA contract. He followed Harold Hunter, who was cut very soon after he was signed. This sparked an emergence of black players in professional basketball.
He made everything work with Sweetwater, with the team. And Sweetwater was a big, strong guy. And Lapchick, nurtured him. He was a good player. But he made sure that everything went right with him when he had to deal with the other teams. Remember, the league, there were maybe 8 teams. So there were maybe let's say 100 players in the league. And there were only 3 minority players, 3 black players, and 97 white players. And so the white players, this was, a situation which could be a problem when you travel to different cities.
In arenas where violence was threatened, owners would build nets around the court so angry fans couldn't get to the players to hurt them. Before each game, my dad and his opposing center, Tarzan Cooper, wouldn't shake hands like is normally the case in sporting events today. They would embrace each other and often kiss each other because they wanted fans to understand that for the Wrens and the Celtics, this was about not a Hall of Fame basketball game, but what their vision was that America could someday become.
Born in 1900, Joe Lapchick began playing pickup games in his neighborhood as a young boy in Yonkers, New York. Reaching 6'5" by the age of 15, Lapchick started to play with local basketball teams. Basketball soon took over his life. His formal education ended when he was in 8th grade, but to many he was the smartest person they'd ever met. In 1923, he joined the original Celtics, which soon joined the American Basketball League in 1926, winning 2 straight titles. By 1931, the American Basketball League disbanded due to the Great Depression. Lapchick formed the Celtics team with a group of former teammates and continued to play for 5 more years. In 1936, Lapchick landed his first coaching job at St. John's University in New York. He stayed there until 1947 when he accepted a job coaching in New York Knickerbockers, where he stayed 8 seasons before going back to St. John's. It was during his tenure on the Knicks that he became recognized for his character and sportsmanship both on and off the court. Although there were African American players in professional baseball leagues, it wasn't until the 50s that African Americans were slowly being allowed in professional basketball leagues. Because of Joe Lapchick and other coaches, African American basketball players were being recognized as equal, but still not being welcomed by many NBA teams. But after Lapchick turned it all around, people who looked up to him tried to do the same.
Coach Fonseca reached into his wallet, and he pulled out his wallet, and he said, Dan, I want to show you something. And he took out a piece of paper, and that piece of paper was a piece of paper that Joe Lapchick gave him 80 years ago. He said, this has guided my life, and Coach Lapchick taught me this, carried it forever. It said, today a peacock, tomorrow a feather duster.
A former player, Gus Alfieri, created the Joe Lapchick Character Award in his name to honor those who have demonstrated honorable character throughout their careers, much like the legendary Coach Joe Lapchick. This event is held every November in Madison Square Garden, where Coach Lapchick once ruled the courts. Character seems to be fading quality in current-day sports, and Joe Lapchick's legacy will live on with this award. Because of his bravery and determination, 76% of the entire NBA consists of black players. Joe Lapchick was a vividly strong and determined leader. Coach Lapchick had turned the first page in the fight for racial integration in professional basketball. He served as an inspiration to many coaches, such as Bobby Knight, who looked up to him as their mentor. Besides his impressive coaching style, he made a difference in racial inequity in the game of basketball. He was the type of coach who didn't yell. He was lovable, stoic, and he got results by being kind.